What's going on, everyone? Happy Wednesday. Welcome into another episode of GC Live at the Buzzer with your host, Jack Veltri. Going to be joined by George Bagwell today, talking about the men's side of things with hoops. It's a busy day in South Carolina athletics. You got National Signing Day. You've got the reaction to the college football playoff rankings. And, of course, there's a little bit of news now with a potential athletics director for South Carolina. But sandwiched in between all that, and it kind of is lost in translation. It's a little bit of a footnote, but there was a basketball game last night. South Carolina took care of business against Boston College. We're going to get into that in a second. The women's side, they haven't played in a few days, but they played really well out in Fort Myers last week. They just got their rings for their championship last season. And then they have a huge matchup against Duke tomorrow night at Colonial Life Arena. So we're going to be talking a lot about hoops. It's a little bit of a break from all the other action going on with football and the AD news and stuff. But, George, first off, man, how are you doing?
Doing well. How about you, Jack?
I'm doing great. Thank you for joining me to do this. So you covered the basketball game last night. South Carolina went up to Boston College, Chestnut Hill, took care of business, winning 73-51 over the Eagles. It felt like a game that South Carolina should have dominated, and they did. And, again, these are the games that, look, non-conference play has been a little bit of an up-and-down stretch so far. Obviously, we've heard about it plenty. We've talked about the North Florida game. But there's also been, some other losses in there. You lost to Indiana. You lost to Xavier. But now you've got 2 wins in a row, and you're in a stretch here where you can really start to stack some wins in non-conference play. But this game last night, George, what were your initial thoughts and impressions from what you saw with the Gamecocks last night?
I think offensively, South Carolina looked about as good as they had the entire season. Pieces were moving around on the court. Spacing was fantastic. Three-point shooting, 10 for 19, that's their best mark since the George Washington game last year. Mm-hmm. Well, they won that one by 22 points as well. Defensively, they went about, I think, 6 minutes in the first half without giving up a basket to Boston College. That was maybe their best 6 minutes of basketball in the 2024-25 season.
Yeah, I mean, look, they have really been solid last night. Like, what'd they go on? Like an 11-0 run is what I read from you? Like,
yeah, 22-17 up to 33-17.
Crazy. And it felt like South Carolina just, once they got out in control, Boston College was never getting back in the game. And again, BC's been off to a decently good start this year until they lost to Dartmouth over the weekend, and then losing to South Carolina here. Like, haven't really played anyone too tough, and in the one game they did, they lost to, I think it was VCU, and now it's they're playing an SEC school in the SEC ACC Challenge. By the way, not to get too far off topic, the SEC absolutely dominated the day one of this ACC SEC Challenge. All the teams won in the SEC besides one. Kentucky went to Clemson and lost. And look, that's a tough place to go play. I mean, South Carolina has to go there every other year, and that's Kentucky's first true road game of the year. But I mean, let's give a lot of credit to the SEC. Like, the ACC is supposed to be the powerhouse basketball conference and stuff with Duke, North Carolina, all these teams. But once you kind of go down the list, and now you add in these other teams from the Pac-12 and SMU and stuff, it's kind of not as strong as it maybe once was. So I don't know if there's a shifting of the tide or anything, and we still got another day of this challenge to go. But hats off to the SEC for playing really well, and South Carolina did its part. I mean, look, like you said, George, 10 of 19 shooting from three-point range. That's a really good number to hang your hat on, and that comes off a game where you hit 11 threes against Virginia Tech the other night out in Fort Myers. And on the other side of things, look, Boston College could not get anything going from three-point range. I mean, they shot 2 of 16 from the floor, and they only had 1 3 per half, which, look, you're getting a lot of your points in the paint, it seemed like. And when you're not able to score anything from the outside consistently, when your guards are struggling as much as they seemingly did, that's a recipe for disaster. And a lot of credit, I think, needs to be given to South Carolina's defense. George, what did you see from the Gamecock defense last night that kind of stuck out most to you?
In terms of the defense, I would say getting to the ball. Occasionally, BC would try and get inside. They had Chad Venning scored 10 on them in the first half. Making adjustments. I think Venning only ended up with 2 in the second half. But whenever the ball got inside, it'd collapse, kick it out. Boston College would miss a shot. We'd contest it. Just getting to whoever had the ball. Gamecocks did a fantastic job with those intangibles, just hustle, effort, fully on display.
Yeah, no, most definitely. And it seemed like I think we're heading in this direction. We have been for a few games now, but I think we're starting to see South Carolina's offense and everything involved with the team kind of just flow through Colin Murray-Boyles, who, yes, he did foul out again last night. And I think it's 3 times this year where he's done that. South Carolina struggled with the fouls in general, I think. And it's a little bit of an issue, but it is what it is. But CMB, when he's out there, boy, is he good. 16 points last night, 50% shooting on 7 of 14, 14 rebounds. Again, that's 13 defensive rebounds, 1 offensive. But in the paint, he is a difference maker with those 14 rebounds. And look, Nick Pringle was fine last night. He had 11 points, 3 of 5 shooting, 5 of 6 at the free throw line, 4 rebounds. And that's the thing. You want more rebounds from your other front court guys. Like CMB is solid, but you'd like your other guys in there to be maybe a little bit more physical, get more boards or whatever. The other issue with – I'm sorry, I misread the whole fouling out thing. 5 turnovers last night. That's actually a way worse mark than anything. So CMB did not foul out last night, but 5 turnovers. What did you see as the issue with turning the ball over? Because I think that's been a constant thing this entire season. Look, turnovers are going to happen. 10 of them is not great by any means. But, what did you see from CMB that maybe stood out as to why the ball was getting turned over at such a high rate?
Yeah, a couple times with those turnovers, he would get double teamed down low. And a perimeter, usually either Thomas or Wright, would be on the perimeter. He would drive in when he'd get the double team. Murray-Boyles did this twice, I believe, in the first half, where he would kick it out to where the guard was rather than where he was cutting. Ended up going into the other side of the court. I think that was 2 of the 5 turnovers. But when he gets that double team inside that Boston College or another opponent would bring down, just keeping the ball up and looking for the open man rather than just assuming that they are where they were, I think that would go a long way.
No, most definitely. But I think outside of CMB, again, you won the game handedly last night, so it's not really that big of a deal. However, I feel like it's a glaring issue that, look, there's still things that this team needs to get right. And I think we keep saying it every game. We're waiting on Jamari Thomas to have the game. He's had some moments, but this is the second straight game now where I feel like he's kind of had a little bit of a letdown type of night, if you will. 8 points is fine, but you're 2 of 9 from the field. You're 1 of 4 from 3. You have 4 personal fouls. And, yeah, the rebounds and assists are nice and all 3 and 5 apiece, but I think you'd like to see – I feel like South Carolina is probably still missing that go-to scoring guard, right? Jacoby Wright was solid to open the year. He set the world on fire with some big shots and stuff. But as we head into – SEC plays a few weeks away now. We're under a month away from that beginning. You're going to need a go-to scoring guard. And, look, not to harp on the past too much, but you had those guys like Michi Johnson was your guy, and then Talon Cooper could go get you some buckets and consistently hit shots. I feel like we haven't really seen that yet. Morris Ugasuk's a nice piece off the bench. And by the way, he's continued to light it up from three-point range. He might be South Carolina's best three-point shooter this year without question. 3 of 3 from 3 last night, 9 points. That just seems to be his specialty, playing 21 minutes. And I think you're just waiting for that go-to scoring guard. In your opinion, George, does South Carolina have that right now on their team? And if so, who do you see, if they don't have it right now, who do you think can kind of morph into that role? Or is it more like a by committee group effort type of thing?
I think it's going to have to be by committee. South Carolina had Michi last year. He's gone. But all of the guards on the program, whether they're Jamari Thomas, Jacoby Wright, Morris Ugasuk, they've shown the ability individually to hit those shots. It's just a matter of putting it all together. South Carolina really doesn't need one person to be that guy, similar to Talon or Michi last year, if they can get 3 to 4 contributors every night. Just go around the horn. If it's Jacoby one night, Jamar the other, that's fine. But it's definitely going to be different. They're going to have to adapt as opposed to last year's scoring threats.
No, I totally agree with you. And I think it is going to end up being, it's not a bad thing. I just think, to have it be by committee, group effort, I think that would essentially mean that you're not going to have that 20 points per game scorer at the guard position, right? Colin Murray-Boyles might average a double-double this year. Who knows? But you're going to have him. And again, the offense should run through him, in my opinion. But you need the other guys on the outside to, hit your shots and stuff. And I think last night we didn't see that one person at guard, maybe Morris, but like outside of that, like Wright, Studi, Jamari. I don't think we saw that last night with them being the takeover type guy. I will say, though, second half of that game last night, 7 of 9 from three-point range. That's good for almost 80% for those keeping math. And they shot 50% from the field last night. So I think they did a really good job of spacing the floor, creating more shots. That's one thing they've done pretty well this year is they move the ball around, they create shots, and they find the open lane. So good on them for that. And Miles Studi went 2 of 2 from three-point range last night. Morris went 2 of 2 in the second half. Jamari went 1 of 1 from 3. So I don't know if the identity is three-point shooting with this team, but you want to figure out, okay, who are my consistent shooters that are going to be able to knock down shots maybe when CMB isn't having his greatest night.
Yeah, I think three-point shooting probably shouldn't be what South Carolina leans on. I think CMB needs to be that rock, but having this ability to shoot from the perimeter as a second resort, as a plan B, would be fantastic for this team. If CMB in a game like Indiana fouls out, who would be the dude to step up? If we have those if South Carolina had those three-point shooters, that's excellent. But it's also something that the team can't really count on every day. They didn't enter the game against Boston College as a premier three-point shooting team. It was in, I believe, like around the 250 mark of D1. Not so great. Maybe South Carolina just had a great shooting night against a bad three-point defense. That's entirely possible. But then again, maybe it is a sign of things to come. I think a fan base like South Carolina, that would be very much welcome.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think you're right about that, George. Like, yes, they are hitting their threes and stuff, seemingly as of late. Like BC, Virginia Tech, they knocked down 11 threes, like I said before. So it can be part of their main source of offense. But what do you feel like right now? You've covered a few games now throughout this year and stuff, and obviously you got to cover last night firsthand. What do you feel like? What would you, if you had to put a label on what the identity of this offense is? What would you say it is and why?
Say 2.5 words. Colin Murray-Boyles. I don't know if the hyphen counts as 1 or 2, but he is a lottery pick, in my opinion. South Carolina doesn't have another talent like that on the roster right now. It could be developed, but right now they don't. He's shown the ability to compete at the highest level against SEC teams, and he's their best option in terms of getting points. I don't know how to say this, but in terms of the offense, that's the safest bet. Sometimes an easy 2 from Colin might be more efficient than a 3 from Jamari. I think South Carolina would love to see Jamari Thomas, Jacoby Wright, Morris, Miles hit threes more often, connect at a higher rate. But at this point in time, CMB is the most efficient option down low for this offense to run through.
It really is. And here's a good point brought up by Gary Bryson. South Carolina does not have a guard who will average 15-plus points. but they don't need it to be one guy. If they have 3-4 guys who can average 7 to 10 points per game, they will be fine. And that's a great point, Gary. Thank you for bringing that up. As of right now, South Carolina's got 3 guards, if you will, that are scoring about 10 points per game or better. Jamari Thomas, 11.5. Jacoby Wright, 11.3. Zach Davis, just under 10 points per game. And that's the big thing with Zach. He was fine last night. 8 points. Didn't miss a shot. If you can get him, we say it every week, it feels like. Once Zach figures it out consistently on offense, because he's a great defender, and he's been playing a lot better on the offensive side of the ball. Once he consistently figures it out, he doesn't have to be a 20-point scorer. He can be that 8 to 10 to maybe like that mid-teens type scorer for this team every game. We're talking about there's one guy that can really be a focal point of your offense, but you also have the other guys. So I think it's good that they have 3 to 4 guys potentially like Morris, Jamari, Jacoby. And I think Zach, and you can group Studi in there, but Studi's more of that guard forward. He's listed as a forward usually during games. So, but he's like that stretch 3 sometimes. So overall, good win for the team last night. Anything else stand out to you about the way things went for this team last night? That like was there anything in particular you hadn't seen from this team yet that you were maybe hoping to see and you did see last night?
Yeah, I think it was just gelling as a team. I think that's the best that they've looked in terms of playing together as a unit, both offensively and defensively. Just spreading the ball around, creating spacing on both ends of the floor. It was, I think, the most complete performance of the season, but also one that points to perhaps definitely a brighter future than the last 2 or 3 weeks would suggest.
Yeah, and now I think they head into this little stretch here where they should. I say should, but you never know. They have the ability to stack up some wins here in non-conference play. You get East Carolina on Saturday, then you have a week off and you face Upstate next Saturday, the 14th, and then the big challenge remaining in non-conference play. Another ACC opponent. You get to play Clemson on December 17th. That is going to be a big game, not just in the sense of it's a rivalry game, but it kind of tells you like, okay, this team hasn't played a marquee opponent probably since at that point it would have been since the Xavier game. And I think South Carolina by that point should probably still have 3 losses. And if they win that game, that kind of shifts the thought process of, okay, yeah, the team has 3 losses. Yes, they lost to some better opponents, but Clemson's a quality opponent. Heck, they just beat Kentucky last night out in Little John. So you get that win maybe, and then you play Radford and Presbyterian before things pick up in SEC play. So you have a real chance here to potentially go with 3 losses going into conference play. And look, last year, I think they only lost 1 game in non-con, and that was to Clemson before they went into SEC play and absolutely played really well. And SEC play is going to be a whole different animal, obviously. But I think if they go into conference play starting in January with 3 losses and they're able to say they beat Clemson, have that signature win of non-con, I think we will probably be feeling very good about where this team can go from there.
Absolutely. I think after the first game against North Florida, that loss, if you were to sit here and say, oh, Carolina would be 9-3, 10-3 after the non-conference, I think 99% of the fan base would take that.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think people knew going into this year, the ones that obviously paid attention to what happened last year, you knew you were going to lose some pieces. You lost Michi, Talon, BJ Mack, Stephen Clark, amongst others. You knew this team was going to look different. And you knew everything they did last year was not a fluke last year, what they did. But everything kind of just came together for them, and it just worked to where they won 26 games and they made it to the tournament. The goal is to get back to the tournament this year. But I think any realistic college basketball fan that watches this team knows getting back to 26 wins is going to be a tall task. And so I guess you're right, George. Like if you were to tell someone that, yeah, 3 losses going into conference play, if they can get there, that feels about right. That feels pretty good. And then you go from there and you see what happens in conference play. I think conference play, I mean, what are we thinking? Like we had this discussion before the season started, like with our predictions and stuff, how this team can finish. I mean, SEC play is still a little bit away. It's about a month away until they go to Mississippi State for that opener. in Starkville. But I mean, what are we thinking? Like between like 10 wins, maybe an SEC would probably be good enough to get into the tournament.
Yeah, I think I personally I'd be happy with a 9-9 record.
Yeah.
This league is stacked. At the top, you've got Auburn, you've got Tennessee, Kentucky. Apparently, maybe not after yesterday, but this league is incredibly deep compared to last year. South Carolina benefited from a good team, of course, last year, but also a bit of a weak SEC. There's honestly not a viable path to get back to 26, given the 3 losses we've already had, plus the depth of the SEC, even LSU, even Vanderbilt, every other SEC team. Missouri just dropped 98 yesterday. Every other SEC team has improved, and that's not hyperbole.
Yeah, and I think you're spot on about that. I think the SEC, it's not far-fetched to say this is potentially going to be a 10-bid league come tournament time in March, and it's gonna be a dogfight. I think you're going to see a lot. Like you add in Texas and Oklahoma, obviously, but I think this has the potential of where I think South Carolina might end up being one of those bubble teams, like not first 4 out or whatever, but like in the hunt maybe for that first 4 in. I'm not sure, but I think you get somewhere about 10 wins in SEC play. That puts you at about, let's say you probably go like 10-3 in non-conference play, maybe 9-3, whatever it is. You're looking at about closer to 20 wins. And I think we've seen teams get in with 19, 18 wins before. That might not be enough, but if you're going about 500 or better in SEC play, I think that puts you over the top compared to other teams around the country. And again, the whole strength of schedule argument. I know no one wants to hear that after football last night, but like, I think you're going to be more willing to put in. This is why bigger conferences get more teams in compared to the one bid leagues in the mid majors and stuff. Because what do those schools do? They don't play tough schedules for the most part. So see what happens. Still a long way to go in this season, but nevertheless, 5-3. I think feeling pretty good about that, I would say. George, appreciate you hopping on, my man. You can go ahead and follow him on Twitter at George __ that's 2 underscores Bagwell on Twitter, or now known as X. And he does a great job over there. So, George, appreciate you hopping on, my man. We'll talk again soon.
Thank you, Jack. Appreciate you having me on.
I appreciate it, George. Thank you so much to George for joining me on GC Live. What's going on? Gamecock Ryan, appreciate you. Gary says if we win 10 SEC games, we're in the dance. I think you're totally right, Gary. I think even with, let's say this team finished, so I'll count it up real quick. So 5-3 right now. You beat ECU, that's 6-3. South Carolina Upstate, 7-3. Let's say you beat Clemson, that's 8-3. Bradford would be 9-3, and then Presbyterian would be 10-3. You'd be rolling going into SEC play. And I think if you get to that 9-10 win mark in non-conference play, and then you go out and win, let's say you win somewhere between 9 to 10 games in SEC play, you finish a little bit over 500. If you finish over 500, I think you're in. You get to about that 9 win mark, maybe 8 at the minimum. I think you're feeling pretty good about your spot. It's gonna be close, but I think 10 or better means you're pretty much in the tournament. And let's also not forget, go on a nice little run out in Nashville next year next year, I say 2025, in March or whatever for the SEC tournament. That only helps your case. And we're going to have to see. Again, this team, I think, has come some way since the opener where they looked really rough. And even against like Mercer and stuff, they didn't look great. But, I think they're picking it up now a little bit. They played well against Xavier, all things considered. It's just one bad half of basketball kind of messed things up out in Fort Myers. And we'll see what happens. So speaking of Fort Myers, we'll talk some women's hoops here in a second. South Carolina women haven't played in a few days. Their last game came out in Fort Myers in that tip-off tournament against Purdue and Iowa State. But before we talk about the ladies, let's go ahead and talk about our presenting sponsor right above me here, Clint Hammond of CMG Home Loans. So maybe you're like me, you're living in an apartment right now and or maybe just in general, you're looking to take that next step to purchase a home, or maybe you already have a home and you need help with your mortgage, but you don't know where to go, you don't know who to turn to or what to do. Well, I got good news for you. You can go ahead and give our guy Clint Hammond a call. He'll take you through the process step by step. I mean, he's been in the mortgage industry for a very long time now, knows what he's talking about. He's a lifelong Gamecock fan, and he's a supporter of GamecockCentral.com. So all the right things, all the more reason to go check him out. He'll help you out through the process step by step, like I said, and get you settled. So if you're interested, give him a call, 803-422-6797. The NMLS number for him is 71597, or you can go to ClintHammond.com. So I want to thank Clint for being a presenting sponsor of all of our Gamecock Central Live programs that you'll see right above us here. So the women's team, they haven't played in a few days, but they did go out and get these. I mean, look at that bling. Look at that bling. You got the national championship ring on the right, and I believe that is the SEC championship ring on the left. And big shout out to one of our many photographers, Katie Dugan, for going out and getting those great shots at the ring ceremony for South Carolina women's basketball to celebrate their championship victory earlier this week. And yeah, look, those are some nice rings, if I do say so myself, and very deserving. That is what 38-0. That's what perfection should look like, getting the best of the best. And look, we've had a lot of questions about this team after losing to UCLA, because the last time I believe we spoke last week about the women's team, but that was right after the UCLA game, which they lost 77-62. And we wondered, okay, what is next for the Gamecocks? Like, what is Dawn Staley going to do to get them whipped into well, I mean, they're already in shape, but like whipped into that mindset of, okay, we lost a game. Now we're right back. We're going to get back on track, and we're going to get this thing rolling. I wonder, I would have loved to be a fly on the wall in the day after practice. Maybe Dawn like tore into them, whatever the case might be. But whatever she said to them and whatever went on in practice seemingly worked, because the women, I mean, they came out firing away in Fort Myers. They picked up a 76-36 win, a 40-point win over Iowa State. And that is a good Iowa State team too. Let's not get that twisted. That is a very good Iowa State team. And you had the big run, obviously, in that game was, I think it was like, what, a 32-0 run at one point, if I'm not mistaken. Absolutely dominant. And you held Iowa State in check for most of the game. You had 30 points off of turnovers. You dominated the rebound battle. I mean, at halftime, Iowa State only had 9 points. That is absolutely insane. And you played pretty well in that game, I think. I mean, Joyce Edwards had a great game. Sanaya Fagan had a solid game. You'd like to see more from the other players on the team. However, when you win by 40, I don't know if there's a ton to complain about there. So overall, I mean, that's a solid performance. And it just showed that this team, yeah, they might have lost a game, but they are more than capable of bouncing right back, getting it going, and still being that if there's anyone that doubted what this team could do, this past week out in Fort Myers during Thanksgiving kind of reiterated that, hey, this is still South Carolina women's basketball we're talking about. Like, this is still a very solid team. And then on Saturday, during the Clemson game, a little bit before, the ladies played Purdue and won 99-51. And Purdue, surprisingly, actually shot a lot better than Iowa State did. And Purdue is not as good as Iowa State, obviously, but give Purdue credit. Give the Boilermakers credit. I mean, 54% from three-point range, 40% from the field. They gave South Carolina some issues, but I think the difference in this game, because most of the quarters were pretty close. That second quarter, though, when you look back on that game, that is the difference in the outcome. Gamecocks outscored Purdue 30-6 in the second quarter, and were essentially able to run away with victory and win by 40 again. So, I mean, look, you can't complain when you're winning by this much. And the great thing about it was, I just said South Carolina needed more scoring from other players in that Iowa State game. Well, guess what? They had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 double-digit scorers in that Purdue game. Chloe Kitts, Bree Hall, Maddie McDaniel, Ashlyn Watkins, Tessa Johnson, Joyce Edwards, Malaysia Full-Wiley, all had double digits. And you see the minutes spread out pretty evenly to where everyone besides Adel Tack and Dowda, you're getting about 15 to 20 minutes apiece out of these players. And I think that really shows that maybe this can be a collective effort. Maybe this can be a situation where, I mean, look, this team's never been about one player in all the years I've watched South Carolina women's basketball, but when they're able to spread the ball around, everyone gets involved. You're seeing a lot of players here shoot better than 50%. That is really good to see. And yeah, you went 6 of 24 from three-point range. Yeah, you went 61% at the free throw line. But you also had 4 turnovers. And here's the great number. You forced 20 turnovers by Purdue. And just like the Iowa State game, you had 32 points off of turnovers, and you dominated the rebound battle. You won that rebound battle 56-26. So not much to complain about there. Really good week. And again, it reinforces the fact that, yeah, this team had 1 loss. Let's give credit. UCLA is probably still the number 1 team in the country right now. Like, they've played like it. They deserve it. I get it. But South Carolina has officially shown that they're right back in this thing, and they are not going away anytime soon. They'll have a tough matchup coming up tomorrow night at Colonial Life Arena in the SEC ACC Challenge on the women's side. You're playing number 8 Duke tomorrow, and obviously, as we all know, last year they did the trip out to Tobacco Road where they went to UNC and they went to Duke, and they won both those games, obviously. But this is a Duke team that can present some problems. Like, their only loss this season is to number 18 Maryland out on the road, and that was 85-80. But other than that, they've shown that they've played somewhat of a tough schedule. Yeah, they played their Radfords, Liberty, Dayton, South Dakota State, Belmont, Columbia, but they also have some good games in there where you beat a top 10 Kansas State team at the time by 11, and then you played Oklahoma, another good team in the SEC, and you scored 109 points on them. So I think the thing we need to watch out for here is it seems like Duke's going to be able to score at a high rate. That seems kind of evident. Like, you got Reagan Richardson averaging 15 points. You got Ashlyn Jackson also averaging just about 15 points a game. And then you got, Toby Fournier averaging about 12. So seems like the guard play is going to be very critical in this game. I wonder who matches up with who. Like, do you put maybe like Tahina Pow or Raven Johnson? Who do you put on these guards that Duke has? Because they can obviously go out here and score, and they're shooting about 50% from the field. As a team, Duke is nearly shooting about 50%, 48, and they're pretty good from three-point range too. So it's going to be a challenge for South Carolina, no doubt, without question. But just like any game, going into it, South Carolina is probably the better team. And as long as they do what they're supposed to do, meaning scoring effectively, like getting more than a few players involved, you do that and you play your brand of basketball on defense, and you focus more on what you're supposed to do to win the game, no team can beat you. And I think one thing we learned from the one loss South Carolina has this year is that the talk has always been they're missing the big presence in the middle. Like, you're missing that Camila Cardoso. I think you can work around that because, again, like I've said it before, last year when Camila was playing with Team Brazil for that one period of time, you didn't have her for a few weeks, yet you were still able to make it work and go win a bunch of games. And you didn't lose it all without her. So, look, I know last year's different, but this is pretty much the same exact team plus a few extra pieces. I think you can do that again. And now you have Ashlyn Watkins back for a few weeks here. She's been playing a good bit. She's doing her part. Chloe Kitts, when she's rolling, she's very good. Fagan's been good. I mean, I think you have enough to where it's like when you face a team with a big, it might be a bit of a challenge. Like when you faced Lauren Betts, that was definitely a challenge. But I think when you're playing, most teams aren't going to have that extreme Lauren Betts type, big woman out there that can go out there and get buckets and play really well in the paint. For South Carolina, they might not have that Camila Cardoso type player, that Lauren Betts, but I think they got enough talent across the board to where it's like they can make up for it in other ways, and they can still find ways to win. So that's what I would expect tomorrow. Again, that game is at 9 p.m. on ESPN, nationally televised game, the SEC ACC Challenge, top 10 matchup between South Carolina and Duke. Then after that, you go out to Fort Worth on Sunday, and you're facing a top 10 TCU team before you return back home and play South Florida, not this Sunday, but next Sunday. And then it's Charleston Southern, Wofford, and then it's off to Missouri for SEC play, and it gets rolling from there. So I think South Carolina is in a very good position right now for the women's side of things. Yeah, you have your one hiccup along the way. Yeah, you've had some close games, but now you're kind of getting back on a roll, and you're winning games comfortably. You're blowing teams out again, and you're feeling pretty good about where things are at if you're a Gamecock fan who loves watching South Carolina women's basketball. So all things considered, very good start for them. You like it to be better, but you know what? When you're winning games like you have been lately, nothing to really complain about there. So that is going to do it for GC Live at the buzzer with myself. We will do this again next week. We'll have a lot more hoops to talk about. Again, this is a once-a-week type show. Now that football's I say calming down, but the regular season is over for football. But, transfer portal's heating up pretty soon here. National Signing Days today. We'll hear from Shane Beamer at 3 o'clock later today to talk signing day. I'm sure we'll talk about the CFP snub and that whole thing. And then, we'll see the AD thing comes up too. But there's a lot to talk about there. So we'll have all coverage at 3 o'clock on that end. And I'll be over there providing that. So be sure to stay locked into GamecockCentral.com for all that. If you're not already, go ahead and subscribe to GamecockCentral.com. It's a great time running the deal right now. $1 for your first week on the site. I mean, it's about a perfect time to do so. Even if you just choose to do it for a week, like, you really can't go wrong because there's so much going on right now. Hoops, transfer portal, recruiting. I mean, signing day. Like, we have National Signing Day headquarters on our site. It's pretty cool that all the coverage we have and reaction to the CFP. I just put out a column earlier today that it seems like a lot of people agree with and enjoy that. The football team got snubbed, and we're not going to talk about that. But I'm trying to point out there's a lot of opportunities to read good stuff and also be informed by I think the best site for South Carolina athletics. So that's all good. We'll definitely do this again next week, and then on Sunday we will be doing GC Live Sunday Reset, and we'll be breaking down where South Carolina is going for their bowl game. I don't think they're getting into the CFP. It just seems like 14 is a little too far out for them. We'll do that on Sunday, sometime in the afternoon. I'll have a more definite time as we get closer to that date. And then later today, 5 o'clock p.m., Kendall Smith and I will be going live, or I'll be going live again for GC Live, but we'll be talking football. We'll be reacting what Beamer had to say, talk some signing day, maybe a little bit of CFP. We'll see what happens. So definitely be sure to stay locked into GamecockCentral.com. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Again, South Carolina men's basketball picks up a big win last night over BC. The women's team is back on track, and they just got the rings, and they get Duke tomorrow night. So be sure to stay locked into GamecockCentral.com. Hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day and have a great week. I'll see you guys next time.